I really feel like it's been a road of God just opening doors or bringing things up and then those things being revisited a year later. And I love the fact that I'm learning that when I can be emotionally indifferent to something big that could happen, it actually puts me in a really good state, because whenever I've driven to make something happen, I've often regretted it later because I got in the way of God or I got ahead of God. So even to think that we could share our story and share what's going on in our city in Green Bay and in our businesses and in our church, it makes me think, you know what? I am going to walk this direction and take one step and put one foot in front of the other to go that direction, but I am not going to sprint or chase it or knock down doors. I love when things have just happened because the timing was right, and something that we dreamt of or prayed for 2 years later comes knocking on our door. We walked into a building a few years back, and it was this old historic building that had been covered with layers of plaster upon plaster and then drywall and drop ceilings. And I knew that underneath we would uncover something beautiful because I could tell by the outside and the structure of the building and the floor where you could see it had chipped away, to see this exposed floor, that this was a jewel in our city. And it was this building that could possibly be a coffee house that I had dreamt of doing and had actually over the years done. I mean, I'd had really bad coffee houses in our church. I had had coffee bars for our youth ministry. I had had the Red Rooster or Common Grounds, and they were these little coffee bars I did along the way. And then when Sean and I started pastoring Life Church in Green Bay 7 years ago, I would carry a Gatorade jug full of water, like the 5-gallon football jugs of water, from the basement. I'd load it on the little tiny elevator in our little tiny church building, and I'd have it, carrying it with high heels on, sloshing it, but trying to carry it between my legs to get to the elevator, to get upstairs. That was our only water source, was downstairs. Get it up to the church lobby, which we had like 140 people in the church, and so few people that also I would sometimes think, are even 80 people going to show up when we first got here? And I would drive to church and I would hold the hand of my 7-year-old daughter and say, Aubrey, pray people will come to church. Like, nobody knows where we are. We're not even on Google Maps. We have, not a lot of people. We have 0 babies, yet we have a nursery. And we would drive to that church and I would just beg God to let some people come, because I figured we moved here from San Diego. It is such a cold winter, and this is where we're going to give the rest of our life. And did we make a mistake and people aren't really coming? New people aren't coming. What did we do? But back to the coffee story, I would bring the orange jug in my high heels, because you got to dress the part, right? And still had to look me and dressed up on a Sunday, and I would bring it on the elevator, come up, and then I would fill the percolator that was a used percolator somebody had donated that didn't work very well. I would plug in the percolator and I would put ground coffee in it, and I would make coffee. And then I would work the welcome center, because I was the welcome center lady and the coffee lady, and I would serve the coffee on the coffee cart when it was done. And then just cross my fingers and pray, God, let somebody come to our church today. And now 7 years later, and 3 buildings later, and thousands of people later, and really over 10,000 people who have given their heart to Jesus, I am amazed that we started with a percolator and begging God to let us reach people in our city, to walking into a building 2 years ago and seeing this shell of a building that had been abandoned but then used and then covered and then used and then purchased and reused in a weird way and it had sat there for a couple years. And so I thought this could be the coffee house, and it's not in our church. This is a coffee house that's in the heart of our little city, on the river, across from a college campus, where there's a lot of activity, but we could bring more activity here, and we could be outside of our walls 6 days a week. And so we purchased the building and we demoed. We had 80 some people demo the building with us because they were probably excited and also curious how we were really going to do this as a church. So we demoed the inside of the building, and it was gorgeous. And we uncovered this tobacco written wall. It said tobacco, and it had a steer on it, and it actually said smoking tobacco. And it was the exterior of the building next to us, because you have shared walls back in the late 1800s. And then we uncovered on the lower level of the building this hole in the floor, and it's where horse carriages would come into that area, and underneath the carriage, the mechanic from the basement, where now we store stuff and do laundry, the mechanic would work underneath the horse carriage. And it was a horse mechanic. The first De Pere post office was up on the second floor of our building. And you're kind of like going up and down, and you can now enter from both sides, and it's 2 levels, and you can see it all. And you see the exposed brick. You see the window and the area where the post office was. And then the front of the building was a hardware store. We're talking late 1800s. There weren't even cars yet. And it was a bit of a mini mall. And I didn't know this until after we had the plan and we opened the Exchange Coffee, Mercantile, and Eatery, which has become a bit of I wouldn't call it a mini mall, but there's multiple things. We have a Mercantile where I sell some of the stuff I decorate with, because now this has catapulted me into being an interior designer and designing for spaces in our city. And so I sell some of my design products. I sell gifts and candles and things like that in our Mercantile, which people now shop in the one area as they wait for their food or their coffee. And we added a restaurant because I knew coffee by that point to an extent, but I thought, I don't want to just be at a coffee house and then feel bad that I only bought one coffee, but I want to be there for 4 hours. So I thought we need food where people can stay as long as they want. Like, this is their spot. So we added the eatery, and we won Best of Bay in coffee, in brunch. We won some historic building awards for the state of Wisconsin. We won the Wisconsin Main Street Award for renovation, internal renovation. We got a grant from the city for the facade, because we took the facade of the building and we pulled it off, and we just restored it and we brought it back to its original glory. And I'm like, this all happened because we fell in love with our city. And we didn't fall in love with our little church building that we couldn't find on Google Maps. We fell in love with our dirt. And we call this our dirt now. Green Bay, but beyond that, the 920, our area code. We talk all about, we are here to bring the life-giving message of Jesus to people of the 920 and beyond. And the 920 ranges all the way down towards Milwaukee, and it goes across the state of Wisconsin a ways. And so it's bigger than Green Bay. It's Green Bay and surrounding areas and another city nearby. And the 920 is our dirt. And so we also say we're here to bring the life-giving message of Jesus to the people of the 920 and beyond, because it is more than just the 920. We have an online campus, and we have people that watch our YouTube videos of our show, or listen to our podcast, or watch our Sundays or our Monday Night Live. We have a Monday Night Live instead of a Saturday Night Live, where we live our service, and we have people chatting and praying with people as they're on. So that's the beyond. But the Bible talks about that Jesus said, go to Jerusalem, Judea, and to the ends of the earth. And Jerusalem was their hometown. He was talking to them there. And our hometown is Green Bay. It's the 920. It's the surrounding areas in the 920. That's our Jerusalem. That's our local area. And this is our dirt. It's our spiritual soil. So the coffee and the Mercantile and the eatery, it is ultimately it's a gift to our city. You don't have to ever come on Sunday or be a part of Life Church to enjoy it, but people walk in and they repeatedly say, this place feels so good. It feels like a hug. Like people who don't know who we are or who owns it, they're like, we've had this consistently said, it feels like a hug when you walk in. Now, besides the design stuff, we do have people that reach out and say, can you help us with our business? I became a partner because three girls said, will you be our fourth partner in a female forward co-working space and club? And they said, we want the same feel in our business, in our community, as we feel at the Exchange. And here's what some know and some don't. It's not Sean and Sonny. It's not even a brainchild and our intellect that created this. It's a goal to love our city, to love beyond our city, and then to want to point people to the life-giving message. Now, for some, they think it's a life-giving atmosphere. It is. But the source of that for us is Jesus. We're pointing people to Jesus, whether we say it's to Jesus or not. And what people now say a lot is, wow, like I come in and I eat, your bubble waffle that I've never seen anywhere in the US, and I eat a crepe, or I have a healthy salad. And the place and the music and the atmosphere, it doesn't turn me off like I would never know it was owned by a church other than it feels really good. So then they come check us out. And I love that because then in their timing and in God's timing, they can be pointed to Jesus even more directly. So I think that there's more on the horizon. We get talked to by other businesses or landowners and developers to bring the Exchange or to bring another business, another concept to their area. And I got a call from a girl, and we've talked a few times, and she keeps moving forward to do this in Fargo, North Dakota. And I'm not interested in franchising. I'm not interested in licensing. This has never been about the money, and it will never be about the money. It obviously wasn't about the money when we walked into a building and it was like, this will be a gift to our city. We didn't know if we'd lose money. We've been successful. We've won awards. We are making money, but I'm not looking to franchise this because we want to be known. In fact, I want that special sauce of our culture to just get really thick where it is, and then if things expand, cool. But there are people that come to us and ask, will you bring this? Will you do this? Will you help me? And for sure, we're definitely culture creators. I at one point thought, I'm a serial entrepreneur, because that's like a hot word. That's like cool to people right now to say I'm a serial entrepreneur. And for sure, I think when people say that about me, I still feel honored they think that, and I don't correct them. But I think ultimately my heart is to be, in fact, we just did a Cheery Conversation podcast episode and video. And the one we did, sorry. The one we did on culture, we just talked about culture. And there's something in me that just like sparks. It leaps. And we had the conversation that culture is also a hot word. But what is culture? And, is it where you were raised, the climate you were around, what are you talking? And business culture is now more known. And I just said, I feel like my biggest goal would be that I would be a culture creator, but that my laboratory would be my home, that I would work it out, I'd fail, but I'd try again, and I'd get back up and try again to make my home the laboratory for creating good culture. Because if I get it right at home, if I can bring peace to my home, and I can have a culture of a few of our words, kindness, peacefulness, teachability, inspiration, life-giving. If I can practice that at home in a safe place, but also I can know that's more important than creating a work culture That's more important than creating a business culture. That's more important than creating a church culture. But I can get it right at home and create a life-giving culture that points to Jesus in my marriage, to my kids, and I grow my own like life-giving culture of Sonny. The rest will come naturally. So we just did that episode, and I didn't cry in it actually, but I found I was way more passionate about the content, because the episode before was really great and it was on marriage and helping people with marriage. But I just feel like when we start with me, and don't despise humble beginnings. And we had super humble beginnings here. We didn't make hardly any money. We were barely making it. We were living off the envelope system, and the envelopes were getting empty way too quick. And we didn't have many people in our church, and we didn't seem to be able to invite them, because we couldn't show them on the map where we were. We had to try to tell them, and there was actually a church on the way to our church that was bigger and had a steeple and looked like a church. So people would drive down the road, and I wonder how many went to that church. We said, we're on this road, and that church was obvious. We looked, and people would say, oh, are you in that little building behind the house? We looked like the smaller house behind the bigger house, and then the church down the road actually looked like a church. Like humble beginnings, but we just put one foot in front of the other. And we worked on us. Sean and I were separated and almost got divorced 11 years ago, and we were pastors. So that'll knock your block off, and that'll humble you real quick. And so we've learned to not chase after anything out of emotion, but to just be emotionally neutral and indifferent when something exciting could happen, but be completely in prayer and peace. And the idea of book deals, which we're looking at, or a show, which we've been working on, the thought of that now, it doesn't scare me, and it also doesn't excite me like then we will have arrived. I don't know what's gonna happen. So